I think about in the early 80s, my brother was in a play called El Hajj Malik, playing the role of Malcolm X in the play. So I went backstage to see him after the show, and he came up to me and said, you know, you should do a musical about Malcolm X. And I said, no, that's not really a musical. It's like, what is good going to have the dancing fruit of Islam and stuff, So I said, I think it's an opera. I think the story's an opera. It's a tragic hero, the classic tragic hero. So when Mary MacArthur from the kitchen asked me, they were doing a new program at the NEA to bring in new people to compose operas. Asked me, if I had any ideas for operas. I said, yes, I'd like to do an opera about Malcolm X. And so the concept for the life and times of Malcolm X was born, and we brought in Thulani, my cousin, to write the libretto.
I'm Thulani Davis, and I'm the librettist of the Opera X. Anthony and I had done a lot of work together, actually improvising. He would improvise with me while I was doing poetry, which I was reading, not improvising. But it worked really well. Anthony thought maybe we could do a music theater piece about Malcolm, and I thought that would probably work because of our experience doing poetry and music together and creating works for us to do. So I thought it would be a really huge job for me, and it's not normal to write 65 pages of poetry at once about one thing. So I thought keeping the level of the work up was going to be difficult, but we took our time doing it, and it's a huge story. And you could do it as a large cast movie. So we had to figure out if we would even have the resources to do that. So.
And this just seemed an obvious story. I mean, the story of transformation, of Malcolm's transformation, and his tragic assassination in 1965. And Malcolm has always been a heroic figure for me, and I think he's been a heroic figure in general for African Americans. He's someone that everyone, even as Black Lives Matter has emerged and other political movements have emerged, they owe a lot to Malcolm X. And so Malcolm X has always been this kind of beacon of and prophet in terms of the movement of African Americans for freedom.
I think it's telling a story about going on a journey, that any human being can go on a journey and find that their world can be wider, that they can be side by side with the rest of the world from time to time and experience what those people are doing over here, these people over there, that, and understand the complexity of being a human being. That being a human being is richer if we're all like talking to each other. So I think that's in there. And I think also that we should look at our own lives like we all have a song. We may not have written it yet, but yeah, there's a song for each of us.
You're following Malcolm's story. So you're getting an understanding, but an emotional understanding. Well, it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, or green. I mean, the idea of his odyssey and his journey through his life is something that you can see yourself at, in him. And I think the more we do that, and the more we distill that, that in our stories, the more we realize, maybe that helps in understanding our differences and moving toward a more positive way, approach to life. It's so exciting to do this in Detroit and having this opera done, I've actually worked a lot with Detroit musicians in New York. A lot of my friends are from Detroit, and so and it seems very natural for me to come to this opera, have this opera done here, and I think it's, you know, it's so, the Detroit community is so much tied to this story, so I'm very excited to have the opera here.
Detroit is remaking itself, and we have a director who's remaking the opera from a kind of Afrofuturist point of view, which I know for young people is a really attractive sort of way of looking at things. So a lot of my students, I think, would be characterize themselves as Afrofuturists. So I like reconsidering the work 36 years later, thinking about it myself again in a different light. And also, in the cab coming from the airport yesterday, the driver was telling me he was trying to tell his son about history. And he was saying, well, I was 5 years old when the rebellion happened in Detroit in '67. And then I've been trying to tell him about Malcolm, the Nation of Islam, how it started in Detroit. And he said to him, it's just history. It's not living like it is for me. So in a sense, we're like the driver trying to make it a more living experience for people who weren't here and who didn't experience it, but you know, who know that they're inheriting part of the legacy of all that community building that was done here.
I think there's a future in you know, creating Afrofuturist operas, you know, of what the imagining a different future, imagining you know, and sometimes, you know, that's a relief from the too obvious, you know, oppressive present, you know. So I think you know, that. So I was really intrigued when Robert presented this idea, because it also is also the idea of what Malcolm means today, that his message and he lives today in our minds and in our thoughts, and how black rhetoric has evolved over the years. You see Malcolm everywhere, and Malcolm's such an iconic figure in hip hop, for example. Or I remember at one point I was talking to some people in Brazil about the idea of doing Malcolm X in Brazil, because their most famous rapper in Brazil, he was huge Malcolm X fan. So the idea of Malcolm is a transnational figure too, and that's the thing that's so fascinating about him, and his message resonates all across the African diaspora.